I, 27-year-old female, have been with my husband, 27-year-old male, for 4 years and married for a little over 2. We have a 16-month-old son. 2 years ago, very soon after our honeymoon, we found out 2 things. The first being that I was pregnant, and the second being that my best friend broke up with her fiancé during our honeymoon because he cheated on her. She went spiraling and was convinced that my husband was also cheating on me. I never had any reason to suspect my husband, and I told her that she was projecting her own relationship onto mine and threatened to cut her off if she didn't stop. She never stopped, and being in the initial stage of my first pregnancy, I was having a tough time thinking straight. I ended up hiring a private investigator to look into my husband for a month, including an out-of-state business trip. The private investigator had 0 evidence of my husband being unfaithful and assured me of my husband's fidelity. I immediately cut off my best friend, and ever since, I have regretted hiring the private investigator. I never told my husband since he literally did nothing wrong and gave me no reason to suspect him. He doesn't deserve to feel that he did something wrong. I've been the most loving, affectionate, and caring wife I could be, and everything in our relationship has been great. I've fallen even deeper in love with him, seeing him become a father for the first time, and how well he took care of me and showered me with love during and after the pregnancy. Yesterday, we were talking about some old memories and pictures on our old phones. When he charged up my old phone and went to send the pictures to our current phones, he saw a contact he didn't recognize, and it was the private investigator. He read the entire conversation and confronted me about it. I admitted and gave him full details of everything. I told him that my ex-best friend was in my ear, and combined with the pregnancy, I couldn't think straight and doubted him. I hired a private investigator to clear my concerns. I profusely apologized to him and promised that he did nothing wrong, and it was a result of my own insecurities. He didn't raise his voice or get angry. He just said, "Okay," and kissed our son and walked out the door. He came home 4 hours later, and when I asked where he went, he just said, "Don't worry, I wasn't with someone else." I know I hurt him by not talking to him about my insecurities 2 years ago, hiring a private investigator instead, and then hiding all of this from him. I honestly can't relate to how he feels, but I can understand how terrible it must feel to not feel trusted by the person you go to bed with every night. I tried apologizing to him and talking to him last night and this morning, but he has been ignoring me. He didn't hug or kiss me before we slept last night, or before he went to work this morning. What can I do to fix this? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I genuinely have no idea how I would react if my significant other had a private investigator stalk me for a whole month. Like, how would I ever be able to look her in the eye again, knowing she was getting status reports from some stranger watching me eat at Denny's through his binoculars? Give him his space, be transparent, and do not bring up your mentally unstable friend with literally 0 evidence as your main excuse. His first response will be, "Why did you believe her? What evidence did she have?" And you're going to look even worse. Comment 2. I am genuinely confused that so many people think this will just blow over. The mutual trust is gone. If OP's husband asked for a DNA test because he wasn't sure if OP cheated and if the baby was his or not, everyone would be screaming, "He doesn't trust you. The relationship is broken." You can't have a relationship without trust. It doesn't matter which partner breaks that trust. It is still broken all the same. Good luck, OP. You have an uphill battle. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for reading. So after my husband found out about the private investigator, things have been really tense. He's been distant and cold, and I can tell he's still really hurt. I've been trying to give him space while also showing him that I'm genuinely sorry, but it's been tough. He's been spending a lot more time out of the house, saying he's working late or meeting up with friends, but I can tell he's just trying to avoid me. A few days ago, he came home and told me he needed to go on a business trip for a few days. This wasn't unusual since his job sometimes requires travel, but the timing felt off. I asked him if everything was okay, and he just said he needed some time to think. I didn't push it because I didn't want to make things worse. While he was gone, I tried to focus on our son and keep myself busy. I reached out to a therapist to help me work through my own issues and figure out how to rebuild trust with my husband. I also started writing him letters, hoping that maybe putting my feelings on paper would help him understand how sorry I am and how much I love him. When he came back from his trip, he seemed even more distant. He told me he needed to talk, and my heart sank. He said he had been thinking a lot and wasn't sure if he could ever fully trust me again. He said he felt betrayed and that it was hard for him to look at me the same way. I tried to explain that I was in a bad place mentally and that I never meant to hurt him, but he just shook his head. Then he dropped the news. He said he had met someone while he was away. He insisted that nothing physical happened, but he admitted that he had been talking to her a lot and that she made him feel understood and appreciated. He said he didn't know what to do because he still loved me, but he was also drawn to this other person. I was devastated. I felt like my worst nightmare was coming true. I begged him to give us a chance to work things out, to go to couples therapy, to do whatever it took to rebuild our relationship. He said he needed time to think and that he would stay in the guest room for now. The next few days were a blur. I was an emotional wreck, trying to hold it together for our son, while also dealing with the possibility of losing my husband. I kept writing him letters, hoping that maybe something I said would get through to him. I also started therapy and began to unpack my own issues, realizing that my insecurities and lack of communication had played a huge role in this mess. One night, I found one of the letters I had written to him, crumpled up in the trash. It felt like a punch to the gut. I confronted him about it, and he said he didn't want to read any more apologies. He said he needed actions, not words. I asked him what I could do to prove that I was committed to fixing our marriage, and he said he didn't know if there was anything I could do. I felt so helpless. I decided to take a risk and reached out to the woman he had met. I found her contact information in his phone and sent her a message explaining who I was and asking her to back off. I told her that my husband and I were going through a rough patch and that we needed to focus on our marriage. She responded saying she didn't want to cause any trouble and that she would stop talking to him. When I told my husband what I had done, he was furious. He said I had no right to interfere and that I was only making things worse. He accused me of trying to control the situation and said he needed more space. He packed the bag and left, saying he would stay with a friend for a while. I was crushed. I felt like I had pushed him even further away. I spent the next few days in a daze trying to figure out where things had gone so wrong. I realized that my actions had been driven by fear and desperation and that I needed to take a step back and let him come to his own conclusions. During this time, I started to reflect on our relationship and my own behavior. I thought about how my insecurities had led me to hire the private investigator in the first place, and how my lack of communication had only made things worse. I realized that I had been so focused on trying to fix things that I hadn't really listened to what my husband needed. I also started to think about my own past and how it had shaped my actions. Growing up, my parents had a tumultuous relationship, and I'd always been afraid of ending up in a similar situation. I realized that my fear of being cheated on had been rooted in my own experiences, and that I needed to address those issues in order to move forward. As the days went by, I tried to focus on myself and our son. I continued therapy and started to work on building my own self-esteem and addressing my insecurities. I also tried to give my husband the space he needed, hoping that he would come back and we could work things out. But before I tell you what happened next, I need to share a bit more about my husband's past. He had always been a very private person, and I knew that his parents had gone through a messy divorce when he was a teenager. He had confided in me once that he had always been afraid of ending up like his father, who had cheated on his mother and left the family. I realized that my actions had probably triggered those old wounds and made him feel like he was reliving his worst fears. I also thought about how he had always been the rock in our relationship, the one who stayed calm and steady even when things got tough. I realized that my actions had shaken that foundation and made him question everything he thought he knew about our relationship. So, when he finally came back home, I tried to approach things differently. I told him that I understood if he needed more time and that I was committed to working on myself and our marriage. I told him that I loved him and that I was willing to do whatever it took to rebuild his trust. He listened, but I could tell he was still unsure. He said he needed more time to think and that he wasn't ready to make any decisions yet. I agreed to give him the space he needed, but I also made it clear that I was here for him whenever he was ready to talk. As the days turned into weeks, things remained uncertain. We had some good moments, but there were also a lot of difficult conversations and painful realizations. I knew that rebuilding our relationship would take time and that there were no guarantees. But I also knew that I was willing to fight for our marriage and that I was committed to becoming a better partner. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for confronting my boyfriend about his lies and gambling problem on his birthday? My boyfriend and I had probably the picture-perfect relationship for 1.5 years. We were great on communication, chemistry, priorities. Everything was right, and we solved any small conflicts smoothly. It wasn't until a rough patch in May where he suddenly became distant and blocked me out of his life. He went from updating me about everything to me barely getting lucky if I would get a goodnight text. He pulled up on a motorcycle out of the blue one night when I wanted to see him, and I had no clue he'd even bought one, let alone knew how to ride so well already. We started talking more again and seeing each other to work on things. And the harder he tries to emphasize how much he loves me and how much he wants us to be okay, the treatment gets worse. Today is maybe the 4th time I caught him in a lie when it came to plans. He arranged that he would pick me up this afternoon so I could spend time with him and his family for his birthday. However, he said he was working all morning and I couldn't see him, so I went to surprise him. His coworker told me he wasn't scheduled for today. Yesterday, he told me he was working all day. And this morning, I found out he was at the beach with his friend instead. He spent the last days begging me to join him on his birthday, but instead, he lied about every single thing to make sure I wouldn't be involved. What in the actual frick did I do wrong? We were talking fine last night. Everything was fine. But I woke up this morning to lies and his friends and family blocked me. What leads someone to do this? Where do I go from here? To add, Jesus, well, I didn't expect so much insight. Caught me off guard, but I appreciate all the advice. I had told him last night that I was done with contact. I made it clear and aware to him that going as far as lying about a stupid shift at work was more than enough to suspect another girl, or for him continuously leading me on for his personal gain and emotional benefits without committing. He's tried asking to talk, but right now I simply won't. If you can't admit to your lies, then I'm uninterested. I'll be posting an update in the next couple of days. For those who suspect problems with me maybe being controlling and clingy, I have made it so open and so clear to him that anytime he would prefer doing something else or seeing someone else or making different plans and not seeing me at all, he's free to do so. Just tell me. I had spent the last 2 weeks asking and making sure he wanted me around for his birthday, and he insisted. He was so destroyed about working and told me he wouldn't be against me surprising him in the morning. Looks like he didn't actually expect me to show up, and I walked into his coworkers telling me he wasn't even scheduled. Now, for an update. Thank you for the support recently from this post. This situation has been a lot. I finally have a short update for everyone. My boyfriend had quit his job on Monday, even though he told me he was working. In addition, his manager told him that a crazy, short white girl came in angry saying her boyfriend lied. For context, I literally came in, asked if he was working, thanked them for the information, and walked out. His friends told him that I went off on them when I simply asked if they knew where he was, since he lied to me. My boyfriend ignored me on his birthday since, due to what his boss and friends said. He was pissed off because he thought I was trying to get everyone involved, when I simply asked 2 of his friends where he was, and literally asked a coworker if he was working, and then just left when they told me he wasn't. He's been lying because he thought it would hurt me knowing he kept choosing his friends, but didn't realize that his dumb butt lies do more damage. He admitted he knew it was wrong lying, but quickly realized how stupid it was when I caught every single one of them within the day he tried anything. I refuse to believe him and am not talking to him for now. I've been open and only asked for honesty, and that was too much for him. And sorry to anyone who was hoping for a side chick. I went through his phone and all his history, and no women were found that I know of. I'll update again soon. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. So, you don't know it yet, but he has broken up with you. You just haven't figured it out yet. Stop reaching out to him. I'm sorry you have to have Reddit tell you, but your relationship is very over. Comment 2. Why would you even want to keep him? Give him the gift of singleness for his birthday. There's someone out there who actually wants to spend their day with you and won't lie to you about it. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through all this. A lot has happened since my last post, so after my boyfriend admitted to lying and I decided to cut off contact, I thought that would be the end of it. But things took a turn I didn't expect. On Tuesday, I got a call from his sister. She was really upset and said that my boyfriend had been acting strange for weeks, not just with me, but with everyone. She mentioned that he'd been avoiding family gatherings and even missed their mom's birthday, which is something he would never do. She asked if I knew what was going on, and I had to tell her that I was just as confused as she was. Later that day, I got a text from one of his friends, the same one he was at the beach with. He apologized for lying to me and said that my boyfriend had asked him to cover for him. He didn't know why, but felt bad about it. This made me even more suspicious. Why would my boyfriend go to such lengths to lie to everyone around him? On Wednesday, I decided to do some digging. I went through our old messages and found a pattern. Every time he lied about his whereabouts, he was always with the same group of friends. I reached out to another friend in that group, and he reluctantly told me that my boyfriend had been gambling. Apparently, he had gotten into it a few months ago and had been hiding it from everyone. He was using his work time to go to the casino and had even borrowed money from some friends. This revelation hit me like a ton of bricks. It explained so much, but also raised more questions. Why didn't he just tell me? Why lie and push me away? I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I decided to confront him about it. On Thursday, I went to his place. He looked surprised to see me, but let me in. I told him what I had found out, and he just broke down. He admitted everything. He said he started gambling as a way to cope with stress, and it quickly spiraled out of control. He was too ashamed to tell me and thought lying would be easier. He apologized over and over, but I was too hurt to accept it right then. The fallout from this has been intense. His family is furious with him for missing important events and lying. His friends are upset because he borrowed money and hasn't paid it back, and I'm just trying to process everything. I told him that I needed time to think and that we couldn't be together until he got his act together. On Friday, his sister called me again. She said that their family had decided to stage an intervention. They wanted me to be there, but I wasn't sure if I could handle it. I agreed to go, though, because I still care about him and want him to get better. The intervention was on Saturday. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Seeing him so vulnerable and hearing how his actions had hurt everyone was heartbreaking. He agreed to get help and checked into a rehab program on Sunday. His family is supporting him, and I'm trying to be there for him too, but it's hard. Now, looking back, I realize that there were signs I missed. He was always stressed and distracted, but I thought it was just work. He started avoiding certain topics and would get defensive when I asked about his day. I should have pushed harder for answers, but I trusted him too much. I also found out more about his past. His dad had a gambling problem, which I never knew about. It seems like this might be a pattern in his family. His mom told me that his dad's gambling almost tore their family apart, and she's terrified the same thing will happen to her son. This added a new layer of complexity to everything. It made me understand why he was so ashamed and why he tried to hide it. As for me, I'm trying to move forward. I've been spending more time with my friends and family, leaning on them for support. It's been a rough week, but I'm taking it one day at a time. I'm not sure what the future holds for us, but I know that I can't be with him until he proves that he's changed. I also realize that I need to work on myself. I need to be more aware of the signs and not ignore my gut feelings. I need to set boundaries and stick to them. This whole experience has been a wake-up call for me too. So that's where things stand right now. My boyfriend is in rehab, his family's trying to pick up the pieces, and I'm focusing on healing myself. It's been a tough journey, but I'm hopeful that things will get better. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to let my ex-husband and his pregnant girlfriend use my house for their gatherings? My husband and I, 36-year-old female, 38-year-old male, recently divorced after about 2 years of marital issues. He admitted to falling out of love with me. It hit me hard, primarily because I had always been the one to support and nurture him, while he was often distant and uninterested. But in any case, and despite my heartbreak, I was relieved after 2 years of troubles to be divorced. I kept the house, I owned it anyway, and he moved to the next town over. Our divorce was finalized just a few weeks ago, and not even a week after he left, I started hearing rumors of my ex out with a new woman. A lot of people I'd considered friends seemed to eat up the gossip around this, and excitedly posted online about it like it meant nothing. Suffice it to say they aren't my friends anymore, but through them I did end up hearing about my ex moving his new 23-year-old girlfriend into his place. Those rumors were confirmed after his sister, who I've always gotten along with, texted me about visiting them. She noted how weird it felt to see him all over his much younger girlfriend, laughing like nothing happened. It was also quite clear to me that my husband had almost certainly met and began something with this woman while we were still married. I deleted a lot of my social media accounts and tried to just ignore all the goings-on and mind my business. I didn't expect to hear from my ex for a long time at the very least, but he called a few days later sounding very excited. He hit me with the news that his girlfriend was pregnant. For context, I'd wanted children with him for years, but he'd always said no, that he didn't want them and wasn't ready. I asked him over the phone what was different this time. He hesitated and said he hadn't wanted our kids to be mistreated by society for looking different. I'm black and he's white, and his new girlfriend is also white, so that can only be a comment about race. During the call, he told me he'd really love me to be an active part of his child's life and be an auntie to them. I was pretty much speechless, and he continued by asking if he, his girlfriend, who would love to meet me, and eventually their baby could come over to use the pool and BBQ at my house sometimes, because it was too big for just one person. I was so mad I put the phone down and ignored all his texts asking me where I'd gone. His entitlement on top of everything else was staggering to me. Now for an update. It's been another week or so and I haven't responded yet. I told my family and friends about it and they were all horrified by the endless bombs my ex dropped on me. His family are actually being incredibly kind and supportive of me, and also think he's lost his mind. I spoke to his mother the other day, and she said her son had been relentlessly calling, trying to get his parents to come over and meet his new girlfriend and eventually attend scans with them. The whole thing is like a bad dream, and I have no idea how to begin articulating myself. What do you guys think I should do? Continue with the silent treatment and just move on with my life, or do I tell him where to get off? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Girl, tell him to go away and block him. Who does he think he is? Also, the race comment is inappropriate. This man is in the midst of a midlife crisis, getting a 23-year-old pregnant and then having the audacity to ask if you want to be an auntie. What a loser. Comment 2. Is this real? Your ex-husband, who is white, thought you weren't good enough to have his children, so he wants you to take care of his white children instead? It feels too absurd to be true, but if it is, that's some good race bait. Now, for the update. Thanks for reading my last post, so a lot has happened in the past few days, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it all. First off, I finally decided to respond to my ex. I couldn't keep ignoring him, especially since he was blowing up my phone with texts and calls. I told him straight up that I wasn't interested in playing auntie to his child or having him and his new girlfriend over at my house. I made it clear that I needed space and time to heal from everything. He didn't take it well and accused me of being selfish and bitter. That stung, but I stood my ground. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from his sister. She was really upset and needed to talk. Apparently, my ex had been pushing her to accept his new girlfriend and the baby, and she was feeling torn. She told me that she felt like she was betraying me by even considering it. I told her that she needed to do what was best for her, but I appreciated her loyalty. It was a tough conversation, but it felt good to know that I wasn't alone in feeling hurt and confused. The next day, I got a surprise visit from my ex's mother. She showed up at my door with a cake and a lot of apologies. She said she was sorry for her son's behavior and that she didn't raise him to be so insensitive. We sat down and had a long talk. She told me that she was worried about him and didn't understand why he was acting this way. She also revealed something that shocked me. My ex had been seeing a therapist for the past year, and apparently the therapist had encouraged him to follow his heart, which led to him leaving me and starting a new relationship. I didn't know what to say. It felt like a betrayal on so many levels. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything his mother had told me. I decided to do some digging and found out that the therapist he was seeing had a history of encouraging clients to make drastic life changes. It made me wonder if my ex had been manipulated or if he was just using the therapist as an excuse. Either way, it didn't change the fact that he had hurt me deeply. The following day, I got another call from my ex. This time, he was more subdued. He apologized for his earlier outburst and said he understood why I was upset. He then dropped another bombshell. His new girlfriend had left him. She apparently couldn't handle the stress of the situation and decided to move back in with her parents. He sounded devastated and asked if we could meet up to talk. I was hesitant but agreed, thinking it might give me some closure. We met at a coffee shop and he looked like a mess. He told me that he realized he had made a huge mistake and that he missed me. He said he wanted to try and make things right, but I told him it was too late for that. I couldn't just forget everything that had happened. He then asked if we could at least be friends, but I told him I needed more time to think about it. After our meeting, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me felt sorry for him, but another part of me was still angry and hurt. I decided to focus on myself and my own healing. I started going to therapy and joined a support group for people going through divorces. It's been really helpful to talk to others who understand what I'm going through. A few days later, I got a call from my ex's sister again. She told me that their parents had decided to cut him off financially until he got his act together. They were tired of his behavior and wanted him to take responsibility for his actions. She also mentioned that their mother had found out about the therapist's questionable practices and was considering filing a complaint. It felt like things were finally starting to fall into place. As for me, I've been focusing on my own well-being. I've reconnected with some old friends and started taking up new hobbies. It's been a slow process, but I'm starting to feel like myself again. I've also been thinking a lot about my future and what I want out of life. I know I deserve better than what my ex put me through, and I'm determined to find happiness on my own terms. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.